Imagine waking up one day, checking your phone, and seeing that you have an email from your bank saying, hey, we apologize, but we wanted to inform you that we've been hacked and that your personal and private financial information may be at risk. Now, I don't know about you, but for me personally, I'd be freaking out because I don't know if I've lost that information, if I've lost it, where has it gone, who has access to it, and most importantly, am I at risk of identity theft? This is exactly what went through the heads of millions of consumers back in September of 2017. Hi, my name is Kishan Brahmbhatt, and today we're going to be talking about the Equifax data breach of 2017. Now, before I delve deep into the actual data breach and how it occurred, let me give you some background information about who Equifax is as a corporation. So, for those of you who don't know, Equifax is among the top 3 largest credit reporting agencies in the United States. So what Equifax essentially does is they collect private financial information for American consumers like myself and like yourself, and for millions of others. The information they collect ranges anywhere from your name, your address, your driver's license number, your social security, your income, as well as other related financial information like that. Essentially, what they do with that information is they build credit history reports. So what a credit history report is, essentially is a way for lenders and people that give out loans to know whether or not they can trust a consumer with that money. So essentially, let me give you an example. If in 2-3 years, I decide to go apply for a mortgage or buy a car, and I want to obviously get a loan, what this agency like Equifax will do is they'll give out this information to lenders and corporations, and essentially the bank or lender that I'm getting a loan from will run a background check on me. They'll check my credit and see whether or not they can trust me with their money. So this is essentially what they do. And now you may be thinking, I don't ever recall personally giving any agency my information. How does Equifax have it? And you're absolutely right. You don't directly give it. What's scary actually is that it's totally legal under U.S. federal law, but agencies like Equifax, credit reporting agencies, what they will do is they can collect this personal information like I described from banks, financial corporations, and employers. So when you go to work and you fill out all those forms, as well as when you file your taxes, all that information you see in your W-2, Equifax and other agencies have access to that. So like I said, it's really scary because we don't know, who has our information, what information they have, and whether or not we're at risk of identity theft. Now, most corporations do have it secure, but obviously things can happen, like I'm going to talk about today, and that information can be breached. So what happened was, starting out in March of 2017, leading to September of 2017, there were several gradual data breaches where hackers were able to hack in to Equifax systems and steal private personal information for millions of consumers. So I don't know if you can see this, but this chart essentially shows the number of American consumers that were affected. So after further investigation, it was discovered that about 147 million American consumers were directly affected by this data breach. Information like names, date of birth, social security numbers, addresses, genders, phone numbers, driver's license numbers, all personal information that you think only you have access to was stolen. And apart from that, an additional 200,000 American consumers were affected via their credit reports. Their credit card numbers were stolen, as well as their credit history. So 200,000 people directly, apart from the 147 million, were at risk of identity theft, because if anyone has access to that information, they can steal your identity and open credit cards in your account and essentially ruin your financial future. And that's the scariest part about all this. So here is a general timeline of what happened and how it came to happen. So back in March of 2017 is when the first vulnerability was discovered. Actually, according to the Bloomberg Business Week, a cybersecurity analyst in Shanghai, China, was the first to discover that there was a vulnerability at all in Equifax's Apache systems. So once Equifax found out, they kind of knew what to look for. But obviously, if Equifax found out, so did hackers, and that's exactly what happened. So back in March of 2017, about early March, was when they were told and alerted that there may be a huge threat to their databases and that they should check out and investigate this vulnerability. And so that's what they did. However, for some reason, with lack of funding and insufficient cybersecurity scans, the vulnerability went undetected. Everything seemed fine at first. However, obviously, as you can tell, they were very, very wrong, because between March and July, several other vulnerabilities were able to open up, and several data breaches were able to occur. Between July then and September was when the most information was stolen, and that's what I'm going to talk about right now. So you may be thinking, who is responsible, who was in charge of these hacks? So according to the U.S. federal government, after investigation, they discovered that it was mainly 4 Chinese military operatives that were responsible for cyber espionage on the United States. These 4 hackers were the ones that, obviously, they had, other people helping them, but these 4 were the main ones in charge of stealing the personal private financial information for 147 million American consumers. So allow me to try and pronounce their names, but Wang Quan, Zhu Ke, Liao Lei, and Wu Xiang. I know I butchered those names, but those 4 military operatives were in charge of cyber espionage on the United States. And so you may be thinking, how exactly, if they're in China and, Equifax is a multi-million-dollar financial corporation, how was it so easy for them to access this information? So essentially what happened was these 4 military operatives, along with their cyber espionage teams, were able to tuck in malicious code in their HTTP requests, so that when the code was scanned, the vulnerabilities were completely undetected. Their malware malicious code was able to go undetected within the actual HTTP requests, and essentially went on for several months, and slowly, gradually, month by month, they were able to steal the information for millions of Americans. Now, like I said, Equifax is a multi-million-dollar company, so obviously it wasn't easy for these Chinese operatives to steal this information, but at the same time, they should have definitely had stronger cybersecurity, stronger firewalls. So after further investigation, by actually a direct team from Senator Elizabeth Warren, she's a senator. She was and is the senator of Massachusetts. She assigned a direct team to investigate this Equifax data breach, and what she discovered was surprising. So, through her investigations, they discovered that the CEO of Equifax, Richard Smith, only spent a small fraction of their operating revenue on cybersecurity. So that's astounding. Only, I believe, 3% of the actual operating revenue was spent towards cybersecurity. That's nothing at all compared to how much they spent, as towards their shareholder equity. They gave out so much more money to their executives than they spent on cybersecurity, and this is exactly how this tragedy came to happen. After further investigation by the U.S. federal government, it was discovered that the intentions of the Chinese operatives were not necessarily just to steal and sell the information and make it known to the world. In fact, it was actually just mainly meant for espionage. And that's exactly why, luckily, some people were affected in America. Some people's identities were stolen. However, luckily, millions of people were not affected after all this settled down. Luckily, the main attack was for espionage. However, when the U.S. federal government confronted China, China flatly denied having anything to do with this. They said that we, have our own business in China, you have your own business in the United States. We have no need to, attack you via cyber espionage. Obviously, the United States probably didn't believe that, and China, still to this day flatly denies having anything to do with this data breach. However, because of foreign policy and whatever it may be, the U.S. government was unable to directly charge these 4 Chinese operatives with cyber espionage. Instead, all they could do is indict them of the crime, and China is responsible for treating that however they please. So obviously, because of the magnitude of this data breach, millions of American consumers were affected. The CEO, as well as the Equifax itself, faced many lawsuits. Eventually, they came to an agreement with the U.S. federal government, and they eventually decided that the settlement would, as you can see, consist of spending over $600,000 to not only fix cybersecurity systems, but to also prevent something of this magnitude to ever happen again. So not only did Equifax continue to spend money on, not only did they continue spending money on fixing their cybersecurity and making sure that something like this doesn't happen again, they also offer free credit monitoring services to people who were affected, as well as cash reimbursements to those who don't want the credit checks. So I believe it was somewhere around like $125, if not more, direct cash to those who were affected, and that's been going on for several years, as well as going on for today. Now, looking into the future, here you go, like I said, $125 of reimbursement, as well as free credit monitoring. Because so many people, American consumers, were affected, the U.S. federal government mandated that Equifax provide free credit monitoring to make up for what happened. So as well as apart from the reimbursement and the credit monitoring, $20,000 of claims could be filed if it was found that they had, if an American consumer was found to have been directly affected. So defending for the future, like I just said, because the U.S. federal government finally intervened, I personally believe that the U.S. federal government needs to directly intervene with giant financial corporations like Equifax to prevent something of this magnitude to ever happen again. Because the U.S. federal government wasn't directly involved, Equifax did not spend enough money towards their cybersecurity, and something like this was able to occur. Like Elizabeth Warren's team detected, only 3% of its income was actually, 3% of its revenue was spent on cybersecurity. Much more money, as well as attention and overall attention needs to be spent on making sure something like this never happens again. Thank you for viewing my presentation. If you do have any questions, feel free to email me at the email below, or reply in the discussion board below. And here are my references for the images. Have a good day. Thank you.